There's 4 mistakes I see almost every beginner make, and it completely wrecks their progress. I made some of these mistakes myself, and if I would have just fixed them early on, it would have saved me years of frustration. Today, I'll show you what they are so you can avoid them and start to level up your guitar skills way faster than you ever thought you could. This first mistake is like having a car with 4 perfectly working wheels and saying, you know what? I think I'll take this tire off and drive this bad boy with only 3 wheels. That would be stupid, right? You obviously wouldn't get very far. You'd stay stuck in one spot. So why do we practice guitar like that? We have 4 perfectly working fingers. Well, most of us anyway. So why do most of us avoid our pinky? Well, I know for me, my pinky was weak and slow and it just wouldn't cooperate. And I had gotten pretty good at using just these 3 fingers, so I didn't bother. Using my pinky felt like a step backwards and it made me feel like I sucked, and I didn't like sucking, so I just stuck with what I knew. But it was really limiting me on what I could do. Just like that car with 3 wheels, I was stuck, not progressing because I was ignoring that one finger. So I started to do some simple exercises to strengthen it, and once it finally clicked, I was able to play way cooler chords and way more interesting solos. So if you're like me in the beginning and you're not using your pinky, there's a simple exercise you can practice to start to build strength and independence in your pinky. I did a whole video on just that, and I'll link it in the description. All right, for this next one, I want to see if you can spot what the problem is even with no sound. There's one subtle thing that great strummers do, and it changes everything about how you're playing sounds and feels. So what was the difference?
Example 1 looked more relaxed.
So yes, that's true, but that's not exactly what I'm talking about. Let's watch one more time, this time with sound, and I want you to notice how example 1 keeps the down, up motion going the whole time, even though he's not hitting the strings on every down and up motion. And example 2 doesn't do that, and it leads to a much more choppy sound. If you work on keeping that down, up motion going the whole time, it's gonna, 1, improve your timing and feel, and 2, give you a much more smooth sound in your strumming. Now, this won't always work, because if there's a huge gap in between 2 notes, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But if you're making this mistake and you want to take a deep dive on this idea, I have a whole video on that too, and I'll link that in the description as well. Now, do you ever feel like you practice for hours and you're still not seeing any improvement? Well, that was me too, but I made one small tweak to my practice and it was like adding jet fuel to my progress. Before I made this change, I would just sit down and kind of noodle around, jam, explore the instrument, or I would play songs that I knew and liked to play. Now, I don't think enough teachers talk about this, but I actually do think it's really important to just experiment and explore your instrument and see what you can come up with. Stay curious. I used to just press my fingers down in random spots, having no idea what the notes were or which ones sounded good together, and there was something really fun and magical about that and finding combinations of notes that work together. I also love to write things, and I love the creative process, and I've learned a lot by doing that, so I encourage you to do it. But I think you need to balance it, because when I really started to see growth was when I started to really structure my practice. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can approach this, but when I started out, I liked starting the first half of my practice focused on technical exercises like patterns, scales, arpeggios, modes, that kind of stuff. And then I would spend the second half working on a new song or some new chords. And then, of course, I like spending time where I would just mess around, write stuff, and see what I could come up with. But if you're not structuring your practice, you're not gonna see much growth. Nothing will make your guitar sound worse than this rookie mistake. It takes less than 1 minute, but most beginners skip it. Now, this one feels extremely lame to put as a point in the video, so I'm just gonna throw in a freebie and we'll technically have 5 instead of 4 mistakes, but it happens so often that I had to put it in here. Guys and gals, please tune your guitar. No one wants to hear an out of tune guitar, so just make it a habit to tune it every time you pick it up, and I'll probably do a whole video at some point on how to tune it by ear, but as long as you can remember, even after dinner, giant boys eat, you should know what note to tune each string to. E, A, D, G, B,
E.
Get yourself a free tuner app and tune that sucker every time you pick it up. I had no idea how lost I was on guitar until I learned this last thing, and then it all clicked, and it's actually way easier than you think.
Now, kids, back in my day, before we had GPS on these here electronic devices, I had to use something called a key map to find out where I was going. And if I didn't have a map, I wouldn't know how to get anywhere.
When I first started playing guitar, I could kind of get around the neck, but I didn't really understand where I was going because I didn't have a map. But once I started to learn a little theory and memorize where the notes were on the fretboard, it all kind of clicked. It's like I had been given a map. And now I understood how it all connected and understood where I was going because I knew where the notes were. And I have a ridiculously easy system to learn how to memorize any note on the fretboard. And if you want to learn that, I'll walk you through it step by step in this video right here.